Nicole here. It seems like an annual event now when Terence comes. It's very challenging and inspiring for our community, and we're very happy to welcome him back again. Thanks.
It's good to be here. Well, this is the culmination of a dream of mine and sort of a departure from what you may be used to from me. I think inevitably this weekend will be a little more personal and maybe less cosmic than some have been, because I sort of have to open my private life to you, because what I'll be doing this weekend is basically sharing a friend. Last year I was here with Rian Eisler, but that was a marriage of ideological convenience. Not that it wasn't sincere, but we were drawn together primarily because our ideas were in congruence. Nicole and I, on the other hand, were drawn together primarily because our patterns of intoxication seem to be incongruent. We're going this weekend to talk inevitably a lot about the Amazon, the crisis of conservation in the warm tropics, vegetable medicine. Nicole is a world expert. She's spent over 40 years in the Amazon after a very complex and fertile time spent in the Far East before that. She's a storyteller, an ethnographer, and a personality of great depth, warmth, and uniqueness. And it's a pleasure to appear here with her. I first met Nicole in 1980 when I was part of an expedition to the Amazon that involved Wade Davis of Serpent and Rainbow fame, and my brother and Dennis and some other people from the University of British Columbia. And I had read Nicole's book, The Witch Doctor's Apprentice. This tells you something. This lady got in on it so early that shaman wasn't even a word, let alone a buzzword, when the first edition of her book came out. And I quickly discovered in Iquitos in 1980 that all roads seemed to lead to Nicole. If you wanted something done, if you wanted to meet somebody, if you wanted an obstacle cleared away with the Peruvian government or the university, Nicole was the person to see. And one of my weaknesses is for characters, and I've collected them in all times and places. My charm bracelet has such peculiar specimens as Ralph Abraham, Rupert Sheldrake, Nina Wise, Joan Halifax, unique types. I mean, they threw the mold away before they made these people. And Nicole fell into that category. So, in line with that picture of our mutual love of hell-raising, I have to tell you that we stayed up much too late last night, and so we're mere shells that sit before you this evening. Yes, and some of you, I understand, are mere shells. When I really feel like a mere shell, I feel like an old wasp's nest. So what I thought we would do this evening is we want to meet each of you. This is Roy Tuckman is on vacation this month, so we have an intimate group. If otherwise we would have had a financially successful group. So we trade one breakthrough for another. But what I would like to do this evening, briefly, is go around the circle and just hear who you are and what your interests are, and maybe a statement of your expectation or your hope for the thing. Make it brief. One cannot say often enough in these situations that lack of brevity is proof of psychosis. So please bear that in mind. 50 people are looking at you and wondering how balanced you are, so this is an opportunity to lead them astray. And I'll slyly organize it so that we come around, and then it will come to Nicole last before me, and then I will tie it all up if I can. So why don't we do that just briefly. Before we start, let me say we will have 3 meetings tomorrow, one in the evening, the other 2 in the obvious slots, and 1 meeting on Sunday. And all of these meetings will either be under the teaching tree, which is immediately outside, or right here if the weather turns bad on us. Tomorrow night's meeting will be here. So why don't we just quickly go around the circle and introduce ourselves. Michael, why don't you start?
Okay, hi, I'm Michael. I spend my time living here at the Ojai Foundation and at Omega Institute in New York. And Terence is...
So Nicole, why don't you just take a few minutes and say whatever's on your mind?
Well, the first thing I would say that I ought to is I never really thought too much about the out of the ordinary experiences that we all have, because it seems so natural. And I've been with so many cultures now. I first went to the Amazon region in 1948, that is, as an expedition. And that was not at all for the purpose of getting medicinal plants. I wanted some excitement. I got it. And but the one thing about that was I got hooked on jungle. It's the only thing I've ever been really addicted to. But I can't stay away too much. I get restless. And it does that to some people because, you see, it is an entity. It is not just a bunch of trees and rivers and mud and bugs. It, to me at least, and to most of the people who live in it, I'm thinking of the primitive people, it is a very definite personality. And it has power. And so that is why I have to keep going back. My first trip did it. I got into a tribe who'd never seen a white skin before. They didn't think much of it. They took my hand and went this way. And then they said something and everybody broke up, just howling. And I kept saying to my guide, "What'd they say, Alfredo? What'd they say?" And Alfredo was laughing so hard he couldn't say. But he finally dried his eyes and said, "He says, that isn't white paint, it won't come off. She's really got skin like a fish and eyes like a fish belly, and she's hideous." So that went my ideas of being the white queen of the jungle. And after that, I learned that these people were very different from other people I've known, in that you could really trust them anywhere. I was with a group of Jivaros. They're the ones who cut off the heads of people that they kill in battle, and then shrink them. It's quite an easy matter. It's nothing particularly magical. They boil the head a little bit, and then make a slit up the back and peel the skin off, delicate cutting around the cartilage, and sew it up again, and then fill it with hot rocks, and smaller and smaller hot rocks, and and then finally sand, and they sort of model it, and you get a nice little shrunken head called a Sansa. And so, well, some people have suggested it might be rather good for me, but they were. This was my first encounter with primitives, except for a very brief one in Laos, in Indochina, as it was then. And I discovered they wanted everything I had, of course. Safety pins were the greatest, the most popular. I had fortunately somehow got the idea of taking a lot of safety pins. And since the women wear a dress that goes, a piece of cloth wrapped around and brought over one's shoulder, rather chic, and fastened here usually with a thorn, safety pins, combining the elegance of jewelry with modern technology, were a great success. And they also rather sometimes wanted cloth. They weren't so sure. I'd taken a lot of gaudy stuff in. And, but they didn't, mostly they wear brown. Stuff they weave out of the native cotton. Cotton grows all over the place. And then dye brown and make into their clothes. But I could leave everything I owned spread out, because you're always getting wet in jungle, getting rained on, or your raft. I was on a raft for that one because we'd gone through some rapids you can't take a canoe through. And everything out to dry, and I could go away all day, and they wouldn't touch a thing. They're very, very honorable. In fact, honor is all they've got, you see, because they have any possessions in a short time will get mildewed, or they'll be eaten by bugs, or they're just plain rot. And so you can't be anybody important by owning things. You have to be it. You have to be the best hunter or the best warrior or whatever. And it works out rather well until our people come along and teach them a lot of other things. But that was the first trip, and I learned to respect and admire these people very much. And I had to keep going back. And so I'd been hearing about medicinal plants all the time I'd been in South America, which was by then 3 years, and that the Indians had wonderful remedies, and I didn't believe a word of it. I'd had a year and a half of medical school, and these savages couldn't know anything that my professors didn't know. That's what I thought. And it took me 3 years, I seem to be a slow learner, before I could accept that. They did have some remarkable things, and only then, because I fell on my machete and got a big gash in this arm. And I have a slight tendency to be a bleeder, and I was out in the bush, not very far from the house, and put on a tourniquet of a vine, and came back, and the interpreter, who was the administrator, that this was a property owned by the widow of a Peruvian who happened to be a gal from Brooklyn, and it was way out of nowhere. It took the record for getting there by canoe was 5 days, and the border of the property were one range of mountains and a river over here and that way. And so, but here I was bleeding all over the place, and they brought out a bottle with some tree sap in it, and put some on, but of course when you're bleeding like that, nothing will take. It doesn't stay there. And so they said, you have to drink some of this. And, well, I didn't want to be rude. So I drank it. It was the most horrible, acrid, made your mouth pucker, and in 3 minutes, about 3 to 4, I would say, the bleeding had quite stopped. And that was kind of interesting, so I thought, I had plenty of penicillin, I didn't have to worry about infection. But so they told me that putting this stuff on it would stop any infection. So I thought, I'll see. And I put a few pieces of adhesive across it, holding it together, but I could see in between, because it got quite dry. And there was never any infection. There was practically no inflammation. In the morning there was a neat scab, a very narrow one, and it healed in a little less than half the normal time, leaving only a very slight scar. So then I had to do a little rethinking and decide that my nice arrogant position of our superiority in medicine would do a little reviewing. And from then on, I went after medicinal plants. And I found they have so much. And their psychedelics are just as important. As a matter of fact, I think there are rather more of them than is generally recognized. Even tobacco. Chewing tobacco and swallowing it is very hard on the stomach, but you will hallucinate. I don't recommend it, though, because there are far pleasanter ways. And they use those hallucinations so very routinely. They'll tell you, well, I didn't know what to do for my son, he was so sick, so I took ayahuasca. I mean, sometimes it was just one person alone in the jungle. Or I took any one of a dozen. And I saw a ghost tigre attack my son. That's what happened to him. Or something like that. And it is so much a part of the life that you stop thinking of those things or the medicines as particularly remarkable. They're there, and you use them as you would use soap or any ordinary thing, but with greater respect. There is a very definite need that is manifested to respect the things you use, especially the psychedelics. I remember the first time I took home a piece of ayahuasca to plant in my garden. The shaman who gave it to me was a very nice friend of mine who lives quite near Iquitos in Picuruyaco. You've been up there, haven't you? And they have it's a little village, mostly of mestizos who, being, most of them aren't too far from a tribe themselves, and Nouveau Civilisé is very much like Nouveau Riche. They have great contempt for the poor, and the poor in what we consider culture. And so the Indians there are about 8 of them, Yagua, and Witoto mostly, and Bora. And they stuck together, and they took their things to the market and all that. And I didn't realize when I first got acquainted with them that 3 of them were shamans. And I didn't know that until one day, one of them came to my house, and it was Vicente, who was quite old, and he was blind. It was very hard for him to get around, and he had to cross a river, and then get on a bus or walk from Bella Vista. Is about 3 or 4 miles. And he had a little boy guiding him. It was raining. So I realized this was not just a dropping in to see a friend. And he sat down and he said, "You have to save me." And I said, "Well, what do you mean? What can I do?" He said, "They will arrest me for murder." I said, "Whom did you kill?" And he said, "I didn't kill anybody. It's Belisario." He said, "You know, I'm a witch." I hadn't known it. And he said, "Belisario's a witch too, and he's off on a trip somewhere." He had gone up the Marañón River, and Belisario had died. He got sick and died while he was there. And he said, "You know, I know that they will say that I put a spell on him, and I sent a dart at him, and the police will come and get me and arrest me for murder." It is that matter of fact. And so I said, "No, they won't." And finally I had to say, "All right, I'll speak to the general about it. I'll tell him you didn't do anything." And then he was at ease. But it's that much a part of it, the ordinary texture of everyday life in a great part of the population there. And so you get so that you get a little used to it and you sort of accept it as, well, that's part of life. And I think it would do us all rather a lot of good to consider the possibilities. What do you think?
Sounds good, Nicole. I'm not going to let you off the hook so easily. I want to bring a little bit of this out. Your name is really associated with, in the public mind, I think, with the contraceptives that are very much a woman's secret.
I remember somebody told me if I kept this up, I'd be called Contraceptive Connie.
Contraceptive Connie.
Not a title, I think.